Okay guys, today we're going to be taking another look at Bitcoin to see if we are still following this schematic or we are expecting something different. As we get into the video guys, if you find it useful, you know what to do. Hit that like button, I really appreciate that. And of course, if you're new, do go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, hit on all, and you won't miss a single video. And you'll be kept well up to date with all of these cryptocurrencies and their movements. Right, let's jump on into this. So here we are on the daily chart for Bitcoin. And what we can see is obviously we have a Wyckoff accumulation pattern that's been drawn out. And obviously, for people who've been following it, at least the channel recently, we've been talking a lot about how we find ourselves in the secondary test of phase B, just down here. And we haven't really seen this spring event in phase C just yet. Now, obviously, there's lots of people talking about the spring event actually happening, and it is possible that it has, of course. You know, everything is possible in the crypto space. However, the most likely outcome for me is that we're in phase B, based on the formation of the candles that we've seen so far. The secondary or the selling climax being the lowest point over here during this initial crash. We had obviously the automatic rally. We had the secondary test in phase A. And then obviously, you know, we didn't go lower than our selling climax at any point in phase A. So ultimately, when we go along, the first time we were actually lower than our selling climax, this comes in on the 22nd of June. Therefore, it kind of puts us in this phase B scenario. And obviously, with following this line, we've obviously pushed the price back up. We've come into this area here. My expectations are that we are going up towards this 40k target area just up here. Before we have a small pullback going up to about 41, 42, we'll get rejected from the 42 area, as that's the key signal to really take it forward. So we'll get rejected from there, and then obviously down here we'll tumble. And once we get down to that 30k area for Bitcoin, this is where the institutions will make a decision based on the market participants. Is there more people going long thinking Bitcoin price is going up, or too many, people thinking Bitcoin's going to the lower side, maybe 20k? In which case the institutions will take decisive action to go into one of two different directions. They'll either go and push the price of Bitcoin up to liquidate the short positions, or they'll push the price down into a spring event in order to liquidate those long positions. There's no scenario where those institutions do not win. Okay, so ultimately they're just going to go after the most amount of money. Obviously, knowing this pattern, knowing the likelihood and the outcomes of things that come in the future, we'll obviously be able to ascertain where we want to be. Ultimately, I'm not a financial advisor. Chris is not a financial advisor. So it's important that you do your own research. You can see what we've drawn up here, go and do your own charting and see if you come to the same conclusions. Obviously, try not to overextend yourselves. Only invest what you can afford to lose, all that kind of good stuff, and avoid leverage where possible, because that stuff is going to get you hurt very, very fast. With that being said, my expectations are that we are going to be pushing up to this upper bound just up here in the due course, before we do have this event where, ultimately Bitcoin can go in one of two different directions. Once we pass phase C, we'll go into phase D. This will take us, moving the price of Bitcoin above 42k, testing that as a support line before going into phase E, where, it goes off to those fantastic highs. Now, obviously, when we take a look at the weekly chart, we can obviously see the expectations on where things are likely to go, right? We obviously have kind of marked out right now about 82k. If there is a spring event, this could potentially push it up to $200,000. But for now, if it doesn't drop any lower, then ultimately we're looking at about $182,000 for Bitcoin. And again, this is in line with the stock to flow model. And the stock to flow model, we haven't spoken about it for a while, but basically we're right at that lower bound, that we haven't been down this low, since these events, right? So the event of the 2017 pullback, but at the same kind of level as that. And we look at 2013 again, all the way down in here, in fact, in 2012. This is as low as we had been on this area. And ultimately, this is exactly where we are right now. So ultimately, we're looking for a reversal on this. And I think ultimately we're going to see that. It's just a case of waiting this particular accumulation pattern to play course, and then ultimately moving on from there. The expectations are to spike up above our value line, and we can see every time this has been the case. We come back, we had the pullbacks, we then spike up significantly above our value line, and the value is, this line is actually drawn up based on the value of scarcity of Bitcoin over time. So we can see obviously where this thing is projecting to be up at $1 million by 2025. So again, if you are buying Bitcoin now, then, if you're just going to hold it for a significant amount of time, long term, it does have some pretty interesting projections here on the stock to flow model. So the expectations are that we are going to spike up above $100,000. And ultimately, a lot of people are calling between that $200,000 to $300,000 range. According to our charts, however, we have this kind of scoped out about 182K, potentially pushing that a little bit higher up towards the 200K, depending on if we have a spring event bringing Bitcoin's price down below the secondary test in phase B. Okay, so now we have a bit of an understanding, guys. It's always good to understand what we're looking at here. So we have an understanding that the institutions are pushing the price in all these different directions and accumulating vast amounts of Bitcoin on this journey. We speak about this all the time in various different articles that Chris covers, I cover, talking about how MicroStrategy have been buying up a significant amount of Bitcoin amongst many others as well. So again, looking at this, we know what's likely to come in the short term and obviously where we are likely to go in the long term. And obviously right now we are in a place where there's fear, right? We have a rating here for the entire crypto space of 28. We take a look at Bitcoin specifically. It's got a C3 rating from the artificial intelligence over at 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗧𝗏. And again, we take a look at this and we can see that it's still got A1 rated, for profitability. It's got a C2 rating for peak end value demand. It does, of course, have liquidity issues. We take a look at that AMI-HUD ratio down here. We can see that it's a rating D, but this is not surprising considering the miners being kind of pushed out of China, having to reset up their operations in nearby countries. And ultimately, that hash power has come down significantly. We've seen this in the data as well on chain. So it's important that we understand that, yes, with that are going to come some issues, right? It has an impact on price to a degree, at least for the short term, not the long term, however. So we have got liquidity issues there. We obviously have got an impact of this. That does obviously impact all this fear, liquidity issues into our Sharpe ratio as well, so that our risk to rewards. However, that gap is closing fast. So again, we're looking to really start to ramp up here with Bitcoin in the coming future. And obviously, as we take a look at the idea here of pushing up before coming back down, ultimately we are going to see the news reflect some fantastic things going on with Bitcoin. We're going to see that fear start to dissipate from the market. Now we're in a bit of a recovery, only to have that rug pulled from them once we come up to the top of this phase B area and pulled down into the phase C zone. So obviously, we'll have to be, for those people who are watching this and keeping up to date with what's going on with Bitcoin, the expectations are to kind of dollar cost average better positions where you can, knowing that we're going to be going up to phase E, and ultimately, not acting emotionally around it. Hodl where you can. Obviously, like I said before, do not overextend yourselves. Do not use leverage, and you will be getting through this Wyckoff accumulation without any pain. Of course, it's going to take some time. Usually these things take 4 to 6 weeks to kind of play out. However, they have been known to take months and even up to a year or so to actually play out this entire thing. Ultimately, the institutions are in control of this. And what they're going to want to do here is basically accumulate as much as they can, and they can make this thing last for as long as they can as well. So ultimately, I am more aligned to thinking this is likely to end, probably by the end of July. I feel that's going to tie up nicely with a lot of other things happening in the space. And I think once that happens, once we get to the end of July, beginning of August, we're going to start seeing a fantastic rally for pretty much most of the cryptocurrencies like we saw previously. In 2020, we had a fantastic August, and then I think we're going to have a slow decline, not too much, but it will kind of trade sideways for a little bit before everything starts to really go parabolic towards the end of the year. December, beginning of 2022 is my kind of thoughts for a lot of the coins going parabolic, and this kind of lines up to all of the history that we talk about before as well. So when we take a look at Bitcoin dominance, the expectations with what happened previously, we obviously had the start of the bull run, bringing Bitcoin dominance all the way down to 37. We then started to see Bitcoin gain some traction over those altcoins, with lots of retail investors being shaken out of the market, bringing Bitcoin dominance from 37 to 50%. Then gets pulled down where more money does go out of Bitcoin into the alts and kind of, stabilizes for a little bit before getting pushed right back up to 50% again. Gets pulled down towards the 45s before going up to 60 and 70%. Now, what you saw with this particular pattern is ultimately Loads of money coming into the space, obviously going into the alts faster than going into Bitcoin. And then what you saw basically was, Bitcoin have a major pullback. Everyone got scared, was starting to sell all their altcoins. And basically, the first thing that you tend to see is people roll out of those micro cap coins. They find them higher risk, and they move into something a little bit more stable, maybe Bitcoin, maybe the top 10, something like that, top 20, that kind of scenario. And what you saw here was then Bitcoin basically rise in dominance across all of those altcoins. It had a little bit of volatility in the middle before going right the way back up. And then ultimately what you saw here was basically Bitcoin go up, reach its all-time high at that point in time. And then all those altcoins overtook Bitcoin. So Bitcoin had a pullback whilst all those altcoins decoupled and went parabolic, taking Bitcoin dominance down to 30%. Now, when we take a look at where we are today, and what has happened recently, we had the start of the bull run. We had Bitcoin dominance being pulled down to 37% and slowly rise its way up to 50%. It's had a pullback now down to 45%. So the expectations, guys, once we get Bitcoin up to this 40K area up here, is to bring Bitcoin down. All the altcoins will also fall dramatically, which will rise Bitcoin dominance back up to 50% in what we saw previously. And again, what we're expecting is to kind of top this thing out at around towards that 60% area, maybe a little bit short of that, and before everything goes parabolic towards the end of the year, bringing Bitcoin dominance right the way down towards the 30% level. And again, that is in line with what we kind of see with this formation. We can see that ultimately Bitcoin dominance has pulled back as most of the altcoins have started to rally up again. And I think that's going to continue whilst we, go after this 40K area. And then obviously, once we go this decline down to 30K again, that's where a lot of those altcoins are also going to suffer. And as a result of that, Bitcoin dominance will increase once again up towards that 50% zone. So again, it's always important to kind of keep up to date with where things are for Bitcoin, what patterns are kind of forming. Nothing has really changed so much on this chart yet. Small pullback, expecting to go up into that 40K zone shortly. I was kind of hoping this would kind of be played out by the end of the week. So over the weekend, we actually go into another pullback ahead of then the following week going up to about 42K. And then we play out the next part of phase B. That's my expectations. So let's see how tomorrow goes. It might actually be a little bit longer to ride this one out. It might actually go up all weekend and then going into Monday have a bit of a pullback. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. But my expectations are that we are not likely to fall down too much further. We take a look at that hourly. And again, this stuff can be reconfirmed with how low our relative strength index now is. We take a look at the volume. You can see how the volume's kind of stabilized here. The selling volumes are higher than the purchasing volumes, but ultimately we're all the way down at this lower band now. So again, we'll be looking to push this up on the short term. And going into tomorrow, I am expecting it to be more green than we've seen in the last day or two. So guys, hopefully you have found this useful and informative. Hopefully it gives you a bit of an insight as to where my mind is with Bitcoin right now and what my expectations are going into the weekend as well. Initially, I was thinking we would have this run over with by Friday, but it might actually be that we have a bit of a green weekend for Bitcoin here, and then go into a bit of a red day into next week. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But my expectations are we are still following this. We are still appear to be in phase B, according to my analysis here. So we'll have to just kind of play it by ear and see how we get on over the next few days. Guys, if you found it useful, hit that like button. I do appreciate that. Of course, if you're new, make sure you subscribe, tap that like button, hit the bell, hit on all notifications, and you won't miss a single video. With that said, done and out of the way, I hope you have a fantastic day, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.